Hey, thank you for joining us this week. I have a special guest again, which I'm loving these interviews. I just really thrive on one-on-one connection with people. And so this has been really fun for me to do these interviews and to get to know people on a deeper level who I may have connected with online socially prior, but also to give them an opportunity to share a message that they have to share about their grief, and to especially those who are trying to build a community themselves around a certain mission, which I can resonate with. And one of those people trying to build a community around a mission is my guest today, and her name is Danielle Duffey. And she is the creator of the Mission Mama podcast. So thank you for being here today, for your time and energy, and for sharing your message today. How about you tell a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you, Victoria, for having me. I am absolutely honored to be here today and to provide my insight on grief. It makes my heart happy and gives me joy. So, yes, my name is Danielle Duffey, and I'm a Southern Minnesota farm wife here on our family farm. I'm an Army veteran. We have 4 beautiful kiddos, an SUDC parent as well.
And we share that connection, which we're both in the Midwest and we're both Army veterans. And so, hoorah to all the veterans listening. And tell us more about what SUDC is and what is the mission behind the podcast and how that came to be.
Sure, yes. SUDC stands for sudden unexplained death of a child. So I've gone through many losses in my life, but the most impacted and devastating loss has been my 17-month-old son, Blake, who at 17 months passed away unexpectedly in his sleep. And so that foundation has been created out in New Jersey to support families grieving the loss of their child anywhere from 12 months to 18 years of age for unknown causes, unexplained. I mean, we're talking natural causes for no apparent reason. So we're unfortunately a part of this tribe of families. And so through this life experience, I've created more recently the Mission Mama podcast. And the mission behind it is really to provide clarity, connection, and confidence to not only fellow mamas, but women alike that have maybe gone through any sort of trauma in their life, but also about all things motherhood, grief, some of my passions, Midwest travel adventures, you name it, but just in order to become a better version of oneself. So I'm creating that community as we speak and, going through life with all these other mamas and friends, to just find that clarity and confidence to get through.
First of all, usually what we create is often out of our pain. And I want to acknowledge that I do not know what it is like to lose a child. And so thank you for sharing that. And we'll dig more into that in the podcast today. But I think a lot of women, mothers, we navigate life, and especially kind of my kids are older, they're teen, preteens, and especially when they were young and in diapers and all of that, I still had I viewed motherhood as like I was in the trenches. Like you feel like you're in the trenches of motherhood. And mom veterans out there, you can resonate with that term, the trenches, but also the word mission, right? Because it is our mission as mothers to provide safety, comfort, a strong back for our children when they're vulnerable. And to just ensure that they walk out of our homes at 18. Hopefully, maybe not. That's okay too. But resilient, right? Emotionally resilient, and able to tackle all of life's challenges. But what happens then if you have a loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations for that child when you lose them? And I don't know what that's like, but tell us about Blake.
Mm. Oh, obviously getting emotional here, but it's good. It's that purpose and the why I am, getting up every single day. But you got to talk about that loved one. And so he, being that he was 17 months old, he was so young, starting to show that bright personality, talking, but he was so lovable to give hugs. And he was always an old soul. It was very interesting. We have an older daughter who at the time was 2.5. They were very close in age. And so he would always want to protect her and take care of her. He had bright blue eyes, blonde, curly hair. And he was just so lovable and just so fun and vibrant, and loved tractors, trucks, all boy. And so life was good at that time. We had a boy and a girl, and, that's kind of what our plan had been. And it just all changed in an instant.
I'm not even sure where to go from here.
It's hard to fathom. I mean, literally, it's just hard to fathom, because especially again, grief is personal. Not saying there's just grief. This losing a child is just a deep level. Like, it's unimaginable. It doesn't even pop in your mind. We didn't have any warning. We didn't have any, there's not that closure, but I know that may not have even changed the result if we had been grieving over a sickness or some sort of, disease, whatever. But we just had absolutely no warning. He was healthy and happy child.
And you know how they say, like, your life changes in an instant? Even if you have that time to mourn or grieve, like with an illness or something like that, it's still in an instant.
It
And
is.
but I can't imagine your child goes to bed vibrant and alive and full of life, and I cannot imagine. And so I extend my mama arms to you, and I wrap you in love. And I hope that those listening to this send you all the mama love juju your way.
Thank you.
And so I can see where this foundation that you briefly spoke about is I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it like a deep-seated passion now for you to spread the word on this? And is that part of Mission Mama as well?
It's starting to become. I think the first few years of this grief was very raw in that survival mode. And, we had 2 more children after that. We moved, all these big life changes. And so I felt like I was holding my breath for years, and I wasn't able to express my emotions. I suppressed them for so long. I didn't grow up talking about feelings, emotions. And so last year really started to manifest and pivot into this new transformation into the Mission Mama podcast. And I'm still learning about what is able to provide me comfort, what the SUDC Foundation can provide that I knew all along they were able to provide, like this community of families, therapists. They have a retreat, all these things, but I wasn't ready. And now I am ready to open up my heart and comfort anyone that I can. And I can't even, it's still, I still question it, but again, I can't live like that. I can't live in so much sadness and despair when I have a family and I want to be there in the present, even if I'm hurting still so very bad. It's just, I've become aware I can't live in so much sadness when there are tools and resources and a podcast like you're providing to the community. Like it's incredible. Truly, you can move through grief and joy. They coexist.
That is actually the one message that in the interviews that I've completed so far, that is the one thing that I've connected the dots of what is said, is that joy and sorrow are parallel experiences, and especially when it comes to grief and just life.
Right.
It's not one or the other, it's and you can feel both within seconds, right? And within seconds. Um, and that's okay. But, in the moment, you almost feel like, is something wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Like, I just feel like it's like a continual roller coaster. I imagine, for myself it was kind of like this roller coaster over many years. But when it initially happens, when an event takes place in the split second like that, I'm sure it's just literally minute to minute. And
Literally, I definitely, that seems so fresh in my mind, but it has been 4 years, which is like, wow, where did that time go? Yes, that especially that first year when you're going through those firsts of what should have been very raw emotions. I cried multiple times a day, every single day. And even hearing you just say, it's okay. I never heard that because people are so uncomfortable. And even your closest family and friends, they're grieving in a different way, but they don't know what you need. I didn't know what I needed. I did need to hear that it was okay. I had met some mothers that had lost their children at some point previous, and that there's one gal, she reached out of her way. I didn't know her necessarily, and that was one comfort, was the joy and sadness coexist. And she recommended me a book, and it's called Choose Joy by Kay Warren, that I still read to this day because it provided that little comfort that I needed at the time.
thank you for sharing that resource. And you bring up a good point in that you have friends and family who are also probably grieving that loss, but it's going to be different for every person involved, and they don't know your grief, right? Because
Right.
that relationship is unique and individual, and yours mom, like you carry, like there's really something special. Like, we are blessed in that way. Like, we carry
100%.
literally. Yeah.
My husband will admit, I mean, the mom carried, I carried him throughout my pregnancy, and I laid him down for a nap. But that's so special too. It's on the other extreme, right? I laid him down for a nap, and I have those memories so close to my heart. And I say one of the misconceptions or realizations that I became aware of is grief is love. And I struggled hard, but why wouldn't you, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because you love. And I'm curious too, like a loss like that, where it's a child, men grieve differently too. And so, do you mind speaking to how you did grieve differently and how you have navigated that aspect of your marriage and family
Oh,
life?
yes, because that's also a misconception that I know you had asked for prior to this, and I've been reflecting on that. And so I think I know a lot of people in general were taught to try to fix everything, you know, any uncomfortable emotion, especially grief, is uncomfortable. And so I remember very early on as we're navigating as parents through loss, and then our my daughter is, I think maybe it's men. I don't want to speak to all men, but you know, through our experiences, when I would break down or have just constant just terrible days, and he would want to fix everything. He would say, you know, he would walk away or distract himself, and
Mm,
I'd be sitting there and I felt very discouraged and questioned, why aren't we in line with the same emotions, the same thoughts, what we do, said, everything? How is he leaving the house today? Right? Even my daughter, when she would cry, we didn't know what to do. My approach was, it's okay. I know I am so sad. I cried today, Emma, you know, like, where he was more trying to fix it, his approach. And we allowed each other to feel what we needed to feel. We've become stronger, but that's where I just recognized, now I knew I need to feel it out, talk through it, feel it. I mean, there were days I just sat there in the house alone and it hurt so bad. But looking back, I needed that at that time, where now even years later, I know how to get through those bad days with tools and talk to someone where maybe he hasn't dealt with it as much as I had early on. So that misconception is, grief is personal, and spouses 100% they don't deal with it. I think my biggest suggestion is to listen to each other, just, and not have try not to set those expectations, because that really turns into maybe some just resentment, or any, just, it builds up, right? So over time too, I more recently started to talk to a therapist that wasn't a, you know, a family or close friend, because it's not the same. I've just dealt with over time so much loss, and it really truly built up, that I finally was able to tell myself, okay, I need to start reaching out further into this network of um, therapy. So
yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, I've done another interview too where, you know, it's somehow like we have this notion that because you have a therapist or you're going to therapy, it's a negative, it's a bad thing. And you know, I went to a doctor, and the doctor wanted to prescribe an antidepressant, and I was like, I did try it, but I'm like, nope, this is not what I want. This is not what I need. And I had tried therapy, and um, you know, it's like you got to find what sticks. You got to find what works for you. Um, but there are resources, there are tools, there are options, and there is hope. And I
yes.
think that's what I hear in your message, as even on the darkest of days, when you are allowing yourself to feel it, which I feel is self-care in and of itself. self-care isn't always just going to get your nails done, or some people roll their eyes at that, like going to get your nails done, but if it makes you feel good, that's self-care. I don't know. I think self-care, the word itself or the phrase means different things to everybody, but I think in grief, just allowing yourself the space to feel is
Yes.
self-care.
I started doing, and I tell this to others, is create a joy list, because sometimes it's okay if you just breathe. I mean, or get dressed. That's all right. But over time, you can start to add anything throughout your day that does provide joy. And so that has helped me even to this day. If I'm just having a really crappy day, I woke up negative, whatever it is, I know I need to sprinkle in some joy. And it can be anything in your home. I can't leave the house a lot without my kiddos. So I take a bath, or I light a candle. I meditate for a few minutes. I wake up in the morning really early and have my morning routine. And that has been a saving grace for me.
I love that. And I've found that for myself as well, like in COVID and just the roller coaster that so many people are riding right now with everything going on in the world. I think just making time, creating that time in your calendar, even if it does mean you have to get up a little bit earlier. It, I'm not a morning person. I don't know if you are, but
I never used to be until last year, having our latest daughter. I knew I needed to change up, and I started following Rachel Hollis, and the Start Today journal has a gratitude practice. And that was really pivoting for me, because I started doing it one day, 3 days, 5 days, and it formed a habit after 30 days, and I haven't stopped since. And that gratitude just creates this abundance and openness in your heart, and it's carried over in my life. So if the listener doesn't have that, I would recommend starting.
and it's just having it brings awareness too, to your body, to your breath, to your mindset. Just even just the action of thinking about something to be grateful for. And maybe not like, yeah, I'm grateful I had a great night's sleep. And that's great. It might be something as simple as that, but you know, is it that you have a warm bed and the comfort and someone next to you that is supportive? You can get a little deeper with it.
Yes.
Um, so I love
especially
that tip too.
especially when life is or seems so unbearable. It just, yes, that awareness creates these just blessings in front of you that you may have not seen before, and it's survival. Truly.
Well, and it's shifting your perspective in a moment,
Mhm.
and probably in a moment that you really desperately need it, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, we kind of get in a tailspin. We start down that rabbit hole of negative thought processes and thoughts and feelings, and it snowballs. It can snowball if we don't have an awareness around that. And so, although I don't know that we can gratitude ourselves out of grief, but it is just another tool in the toolbox, right?
It is.
For those moments where we really might have to dig for something to be grateful for. Um, so thank you for sharing that. Um, what has been, I want to speak to a little bit, what was some of the unhelpful things that people unintentionally, I do believe it's unintentional. It's just, what we kind of learn since we're in diapers. But what are some of the things that people said or did that was hurtful or unhelpful in your during your time of loss?
Gosh, we've had nothing but strong support and love surrounding us, but I think early on, especially, as those closest to me, or even not even closest to me, if I was out in public, they would turn away. And it may seem so small, but I haven't forgotten. But it's not saying anything. It's not acknowledging your loss. For gosh sakes, like it's your life. I mean, and so for those that, I remember having, dinner with one friend here and there, and I was suppressing my emotions, and I wanted them to bring it up, but we had never done. And then I remember leaving, and I was just devastated. And so I think the misconception too is, if I don't bring it up, they're not going to be sad, right? But it's the complete opposite. And I think it's just what people didn't say. For the majority, we had nothing but strong support. I remember having a food train for the first year of our life, of loss, of losing Blake. That whole year, every single week we had meals, and that was so comforting. We didn't know it was comforting, but it was such a small gesture that went a long way. But I think, just again, as I said, the unintentional but unhealthy things were what people didn't say. Or I guess for me, that was mostly it. We've just had a really, I would say, a healthy grieving process and strong support. I have the type of personality, I've really never cared what anyone thought. And I think that almost helped in the process, because there were probably thoughts and assumptions with whatever, but we were the only one going through it, that we knew that there was nothing we could do to have prevent this. This is a very rare circumstance, but possible. And so I guess that's kind of the gist of what I have to say. But I had heard of just so many other stories and families, and the guilt that some carry, but we had a strong support system.
I've been choking that back. I'm so sorry. Just a tickle, like right there. I'm gonna have to edit this out. I'm gonna have to edit that out, but oh, it was like right there, and I didn't want to cough and interrupt you. Oh, it like brought tears in my eyes.
I feel you, yes.
Oh, you can't plan for those moments. Let me take a drink here. My cold coffee. Okay. Hoofda. Let me see if I can respond now.
That's a hard question. I had to really think about that, because we've had some, like I said, strong support system, and they may have not known what to say, but for the most part, we've had the right people in the right space.
Thank you for sharing that tip on the food train. And a year, that is amazing. That is amazing support. And the reason why I asked that question, though, is because I want to bring an educational piece to how we can support grievers. And so even just when you know someone is grieving, just acknowledging their presence, not turning away, but acknowledging that you see them.
Exactly.
That they don't have the plague, it's that goes a long way, like a smile and a wave.
Exactly.
If you don't know what to say, just smile and wave, or blow a kiss, or if you don't know what to say, there's gestures to express support, right?
I think one thing that I just thought of, actually, and again, you don't know what you need, and it's not really a pet peeve. It's at the funeral and over time, so many people would say, please let me know what you need. Please, please reach out. You can barely take a breath. You need to reach out to those grieving parents. You need to just send a message. Just say, I'm thinking about you. And that's one thing that I had in my notes is one thing that I provided me comfort was one of my good friends. She's just so good to me. She texted me, or she would reach out every single week for a year
Hmm.
and let us know she's thinking of us. She would acknowledge those milestones. She would acknowledge Blake's birthday. She would acknowledge Mother's Day versus not. And so that meant, and it still means the world to me today. And so that's what I have to say to that. And then one thing that popped in my head too, as you asked that question, was I was a full-time working mom, and I remember going back to work in the office 2 weeks later. I don't even know how I got myself to leave the house, but my employer hadn't ever gone through something like that, and I didn't know what I needed. The misconception too is, oh, so you're taking a lot of time off. And I'm thinking, to do what? No, I need to have purpose. I need to live. I need to stay busy almost and be distracted. But I wish I would have taken more time to be with family, to be with friends, because as soon as the kind of the funeral and the family leaves, you're alone. And so my suggestion is to work from home, or just, I mean, do what you know how to do that next best thing. But I didn't need, I should say, time off right away. I needed more time throughout the year. But I didn't have any PTO. So I didn't feel supported in that way. Just reflecting back though. And again, I didn't know at the time.
Thank you for bringing that up. And actually, that's one aspect of, um, that is a blessing of being an entrepreneur, is you have that flexibility. But if you do work for somebody else, we typically get, 3 or 4 days of bereavement time. I use that in quotation marks. Like,
Yes.
you get 3 or 4 days to get over your loss and come back to work and function as you always did. That is so unrealistic. And I do wish and hope that companies, if you're a CEO of a company and you're listening to this, or you're an entrepreneur and you have people working for you and they are going through a difficult time or period, to step up to the plate and support them in their loss, because they are not going to function the same way as they did before in grief. And you can speak to this, your experience of, did you feel like you could concentrate, focus, get through the day and be productive? Like, did you feel like you were even being productive?
It's pretty much a fog. But no, I had recommended to my employer to start a PTO donation, or, where employees donate. We were a smaller company, so it wasn't possible. But you just need to know that it's okay if you need to step away, or just have that flexibility. Know that, just validate their emotions.
Absolutely. Grief actually costs our economy into the billions. I think it's $17 billion a year. And that's an old statistic, that grief causes companies and our economy in productivity and just loss of work and things like that. And that's why I just always say this, like, grief is our pandemic. It always has been. It's this unspoken, it's just this unspoken thing that is in the undercurrent of every single one of us, because we all endure loss of some sort, loss of hopes, dreams, expectations, anything we wish would have been different, better, or more. And, that's in the context of relationships usually, but we have these intangible losses, these ripples of our losses. Can you speak to those ripples of losses that you experienced? That you can, I don't know, kind of putting you on the spot, but does anything come to
It's okay.
mind?
Um, Maybe some relationships. I think, again, I mentioned this past year after having two more children, not really having a time to take a breath. I'm a new self. We have a new life. So it's grieving. Those intangible losses are relationships, new jobs that come and go, new passions. I mean, Blake would be entering kindergarten, and so there's that I carry. Um, you really have to spend some time to have that quietness to really reflect on that, but it does unconsciously affect you so much.
When you mentioned a lot of change too during that time. It wasn't just the loss, but then a lot of change that followed, and you added two more children to your family dynamic and things like that. But like even just moving, did
Right.
the I don't know the circumstance of the move, but even that, like you're saying goodbye to maybe old neighbors, and I know you said you live now in the country, right?
So we actually only moved a quarter of a mile away, right? So we live on the family farm. We swapped houses with my in-laws and that are probably going to be listening to this. And I'll be honest, it was a lot right away. I was pregnant with our third child, our son, and it was a lot because so it was happening so fast, really didn't have time to reflect, make any decisions. It was all overwhelming and confusing. However, I think it was the best thing. We've recreated a new life in this new home. It was, I have faith. It was how it was meant to be. Over there at the old place, there are memories, and yes, maybe early on it was sad because those were the memories. We spent a lot of time outdoors. That was our home. But now we've created our home. We've made it our own. We've planted a tree for Blake. We've made it our own. And so as time passes, it doesn't get better. It just gets different. And it's really hard to articulate that because we've endured so much change. But I can admit that it's the way it's supposed to be. This was our plan all along. So I've become to accept with new life, with new relationships, there's going to be loss, those intangible ways, and also with growth. I'm a new person. I've grown so much, and I never imagined talking about this at all, or let alone having my own podcast. So it's very interesting how life works.
I would have to agree that I've experienced exponential growth through loss. And another gal and I on podcast interview, it just the one that went live last week or this week with Patsy, we kind of briefly touched on that, like, the eye rolls of there's gifts in grief, like there's one of those is growth, I would think, I feel. Um, you don't want to hear that though when you're, that's the last thing you want to hear probably when you're really experiencing, when you're really knee deep in loss. Um, but beautiful things can be on the other side. And
I can, yes, I can relate to that. I had said before, life was good. Life felt good. I felt like I was in the moment. I've always been an intuitive person, optimistic, positive, and then most recently, I feel more awake. I'm for whatever reason, it is a beautiful gift. And I can admit to that. I feel awake, and it's scary because you do question the good, but I've never been or felt so grateful. My heart is exploding with gratitude.
I just got chill bumps. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So you shared a lot of tips today, connecting with others that lost a child, allowing yourself to feel, like honoring your feelings and emotions. Absolutely important. Not setting expectations, right, on anyone else and their grief and how they grieve. And I'm sure even too, like just the dynamics of the relationship kind of shift for a time until you recalibrate and you find your way back to each other. And I love too how you shared how to support a griever. You've given a lot today through your story, and I appreciate you, and I thank you for sharing. I want to read a part that you had shared in your I send out a form for people who are guests on my podcast, and I just want to read this for everybody because I really love it. And this is in Danielle's words. I believe part of my purpose through the Mission Mama podcast and community to connect and provide clarity and confidence for those fellow mamas out there. We are not meant to live this life alone. And I think that is absolutely beautiful. We are not meant to live this life alone. And so if there's anything that you got today from Danielle's message, I sure hope, and I believe wholeheartedly that you've heard hope today. And that's too also my mission on this podcast is to share hope, that there is hope. Is there anything else you would like to share?
As you've alluded to, we're all going through some sort of loss or will in our life. And this morning I was listening to a podcast by Emily Freeman, and it really sunk in. And so I want to speak to that as my one last thought. But in our world today, supposed to be no longer has a meaning. You know, we all know that 2020 has really been out of our control. It's you know, to be in control is an illusion. And so instead we've had to adapt, accept, and acknowledge what we need to let go and continue to just do the next best thing. And I think one thought is, with your podcast, you're positively contributing to the world, especially right now. So many people are grieving, and having these tools and resources and connections is incredible. So thank you for what you do as well. And I feel honored to be your guest today.
Thank you. And also too, create a joy list, right?
There you go.
There was a lot more I think we could have dug into, but I really feel like we covered a lot. And I feel like what the message that needed to be shared today, yeah, is good. So I thank you for your message, for sharing your grieving voice. And if people want to reach out to you, if they want to hear more about the organization, SUDC, if they want to maybe be a part of your podcast, be a guest on your podcast, Mission Mama, where are the best places that people can reach out to you or find you?
Absolutely. You can find the Mission Mama. The best way to connect is on Instagram at the Mission Mama. And I'd love for you to support or acknowledge the SUDC Foundation. You can contact me for more, or you can go to sudc.org. I'd love a shout out. If you need support or comfort, let's connect at the Mission Mama. And again, my heart is full. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I will put all of the links in the show notes. She shared a lot of great nuggets, books, the journal, everything that Danielle mentioned, I will put in the show notes. So thank you again. My mama heart goes out to you, and many blessings for your family moving forward. And to all my dear listeners, thank you for listening, for your time. I know it's precious, but this message I feel like needed to be heard. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.
Much love.